So there's a common narrative going around the interwebs as of late. The narrative is that young people don't want to work. And in this video, we're going to talk about it. We're going to review a video and we're going to talk about, does Gen Z want to work? Do young people want to work? Are they lazy? We're going to answer all of these questions and I'm going to give you my opinion as a Gen Z person. So let's get into this video. The video is why young people don't want to work anymore by Mad Economy, right? Okay.
Since you've probably heard in the last few years, maybe from a frustrated parent, an angry HR manager, or a boomer on Facebook. It's the declaration that Gen Z just doesn't want to work anymore. It's become sort of a cultural punchline, almost like a generational accusation. But beneath the jokes, beneath the TikTok memes, the viral clips of teenagers announcing they don't dream of labor, lies something deeper, something worth understanding. Because Gen Z didn't just wake up one morning and decide, you know what, work is optional, I'm done. Their frustration didn't just come out of the blue. It came from a world where the old rules of work don't match the new reality. By the end of this video, you might realize Gen Z isn't running away from work. They're running away from a system that stopped working years ago.
Can somebody explain to me in crayon-eating terms why I make over 3 times the federal minimum wage and I cannot afford to live? And I do not want to hear the pull yourself up from your bootstraps, work 90 hours a week. That's not the goal, guys. That's not. That should not be our standard.
This is absolutely correct, guys. I've worked many jobs, okay? I've had periods where I worked all day and then I went to bed, woke up the next morning, and then I worked all day again. And I've had periods where I had a stable job, full-time job, and I'd take all of the overtime I could, okay? And you know what? Every year, rent goes up. Rent goes up, it's a few hundred more you have to pay every year. Whereas your paycheck, you barely get like 10 cents, 10 pence more every year. And it's at the point now where it's ridiculous. It's literally ridiculous and it's offensive to me. I feel offended by this treatment. This is I wouldn't treat my enemies this way. This is unfair, and that's the simple truth. It's not laziness. For guys, honestly, how lazy do you have to be to not want to work for fair wages? Tell me that. How lazy do you have to be? If you got paid fairly, would you be wanting to work? Do people that go on oil rigs, do they are probably compensated fairly, right? Do they just quit? No. Do bankers on Wall Street just quit? No. It's the lower positions, right? It's the cashiers, it's the minimum wage positions, right? And the minimum wage right now in the United Kingdom, it's about 12.25 or something like that. And you'd have to work a long time to pay for anything. And I think a lot of people just are acknowledging the facts here. Okay? And to me, it's really disrespectful when you don't hear me out and when you try to fool me is the main thing. Like, I'm not getting fooled by this. I'm going to look for any alternative that I can before going to work at some crap minimum wage place. I'm going to cut all my expenses and buy nothing at all, which I've done already before I decide that I'm going to give my time for its pennies compared to what my time on this earth is worth, compared to what each person's time on the planet is worth. The compensation for labor is pennies. And I'm not even talking about I'm just talking about regular people right now. I'm not even talking about like immigrant workforce, which is a nightmare that's even worse, multiple times worse than regular people. So, you know, the deeper you go, the worse it gets. But the crux of the issue and why everybody's saying these things like Gen Z is lazy or whatever is because it's gotten so bad at this point that even the people that seemingly have it okay are like, nah, this is not it.
To understand the present, we need to step back in time. If you lived during the Industrial Revolution, work was brutally straightforward. It was survival. People worked long hours in dangerous conditions because not working simply wasn't an option. You didn't try to find passion, fulfillment, or creativity in your job. Your job was a necessity, not a dream. Then you move on into the mid 20th century, the 19th.
Fun fact as well about industrialization. You know, in your textbook, it probably says, like, when you were at school, they probably taught you that people were like, oh, all these factories got built and everybody moved to the cities. But what they don't say in the textbook is that this was not optional for people. They were forced to, like cattle. And now people move to the city voluntarily because we're so down the rabbit hole at this point. We've been conditioned so badly to exist and perpetuate this kind of this it's wage slavery. It's wage slavery. It's taking advantage of the population. It's exploitation is what it is realistically. And you know, I that's one of the things that grinds my gears. I don't like being exploited, okay? I'd rather I'd rather be free. I'd rather be penniless and free than being exploited by these soulless corporate types. Okay, that's the truth. And it's been going on for way longer than from the 1950s, okay? In fact, you know what? In the 1950s it was probably better than now.
1950s to the 1980s, a period many older generations still romanticize. Back then, the path to a stable life was incredibly linear. Go to a school, get a job, buy a home, retire with a pension. That system genuinely rewarded consistency. Even a factory worker or a cashier could afford a home, raise a family, and save for retirement on a single income. They didn't need to sell an online course or start an OnlyFans.
And you know what? By that time, the corporations haven't had time yet to completely hollow out all the checks and balances provided by the government to the people to actually keep these corporates in line. Because now crime is legal if you're a big enough corporation. That's just legit the truth. Crime is legal if you have enough money. And that's not the world I want to live in. I don't really want to be a part of this. In fact, you know, it makes me, I think it makes me sick physically and mentally to participate. And I'm ashamed of the way the human race conducts itself. I am genuinely ashamed.
Stability was the default. Now fast forward to the present. The world Gen Z inherited is mostly unrecognizable by comparison. Work is no longer predictable. Jobs aren't guaranteed. Companies don't promise loyalty. Homeownership feels like a fantasy. And the idea of working for one employer for 40 years is basically comedy material. The world changed, work changed, but oddly, the expectations did not change.
Well, this is where we come in, right? This is where we come in, and we are changing the expectations. Like, for me, the expectations are changed forever. Like, my mindset is completely different. Like, I don't even think about relying on these corporate entities. I don't even think that the government is there to help me. In fact, I think that they're probably here to make my life more difficult, which is not probably news to most of you. But, you know, there was a time when I thought the government was going to help me and is on my side. There was a time like that. But I think my demographic is slowly shaping the way that we interact with these corporates. Over time, people's Overton window is going to shift, and we're going to understand better how to deal with these corporates. Because me, I I'm genuinely I'd like to say that I'm a nice person, you know, but when it comes to dealing with corpos, I um I kind of flip the switch and I'm kind of a psychopath because I know that, well, they're going to look to exploit me in any way possible. So I'm looking to exploit them in any way possible. And that's just the cold hard truth of how things are nowadays, because there's no solidarity, there's no trust, there's no sort of integrity of how to conduct yourself. There's only a profit motive, and that's it. And that's all it is for me. There's only a profit motive when it comes to working with these corporates.
Let's talk numbers for a moment, because no matter how people spin this argument, it always comes back to basic economics. The truth is simple. Gen Z isn't rejecting work, they're rejecting bad offers, bad deals. Previous generations lived during a time where wages actually grew alongside productivity and inflation. If the cost of living increased, salaries eventually followed. That allowed people to plan, save, and dream. But this generation stepped into a world where prices exploded and wages stayed almost frozen in place. Rent rose faster
Yep.
than incomes, education became absurdly expensive, healthcare became financially crippling, groceries got pricier, transportation costs increased. Meanwhile, entry-level job salaries barely changed. Gen Z isn't lazy, they're observant. They see that the numbers don't add up. You can work full-time in many cities and still be unable to afford basic housing. You can get a degree and still end up at a job that pays less than your tuition fees. You can do everything right and still fall behind.
And the truth is, it's designed that way. Everything is built in a way so that to keep you stuck as much as possible. The minimum wage is perfect. It's perfect because it gives you just enough to survive, but it doesn't give you enough to be able to change your circumstances. Realistically, if you're not going psychopathic and if you're not saving every single dime and you have a clear plan, but most people, they come back from work and they're so damn exhausted that they don't even have the mental capacity to work out a plan or have a moment to themselves to think about what it is going on around them. So yeah.
And then there's automation, AI. Most of the jobs older generations depended on have either disappeared or are no longer secure.
There is this narrative nowadays that AI is taking everybody's jobs, but I think that it may be true for the most part or in part, but I also acknowledge that there are scare tactics used to sort of keep in line the population, and things include things like scares with sort of scarcity, right? This is You could call this a scarcity kind of manipulation. Like, oh no, your job might be gone now because of AI, so you should probably watch out. Then there's shaming, which is what we're kind of discussing here. Gen Z don't want to work. Young people are lazy. This is a shaming tactic, and it works on a lot of people. So the reason I think that the AI thing is so prolific is because, first of all, there's a lot of dysregulation in terms of immigrant workers, H-1B visas, and alike, because you can get it cheaper. You can get it cheaper if you hire somebody from India. You can. And companies know this, and companies, they lobby and they put consistent effort in order to manipulate basically our representatives to make the conditions better for them. And the sad part is that it's working really well and we are getting bent over in the process. And another thing is, I don't think that if you really dig into it, then the productivity gains from AI that companies report is sort of minuscule compared to what they pitch. I think really it's the fact that you don't actually need so many individuals to be working for you all the time. I think you can cycle your workforce, and at some points you have a lot of workforce when you're developing technologies, then you can coast for a bit, right? For a couple of years. And you can drastically lower your workforce to just have operations maintained because you're not building anything new, and you get your share price boost.
AI writes, calculates, analyzes, solves, and generates. Customer service is now done by chatbots. Factory jobs are done by machines. Office roles are increasingly automated. Gen Z didn't decide to abandon work. The economy decided to abandon them first. Something else happened along the way. People got tired, emotionally, mentally, physically. Millennials experienced burnout at historic levels, pushing themselves through unpaid internships, side hustles, late night work emails, and toxic corporate environments that called themselves family. Gen Z watched all of that
That's the worst, bro. The corporate cringe is the worst thing. The pizza parties, instead of paying you more, because obviously they save money this way. The gaslighting, the corporate gaslighting, is something I dread. Okay, the corporate propaganda. You'd know what I mean if you've ever worked for like a retail thing or something like that. There's incessant corporate propaganda that's fed to you before you do your work or whatever, before you start your work. And another thing that grinds my gears is that there is so much labor actually that is unpaid. And companies know exactly what they can get away with in terms of making you do stuff for free, like doing a 6 hour training, and nobody's going to pay you for it. And the reason I believe that corpos are so comfortable right now is because labor unions really aren't a thing anymore. I don't think labor unions really exist or are efficient anymore. They're greatly diminished. And part of that is because of the environment and how lobbying works currently, unfortunately.
and said no to the yearly office pizza parties. And they began asking questions no one dared to ask before. Why are we expected to be available 24/7? Why is burnout treated like normal life? Why do companies demand loyalty but offer none? Why should I sacrifice myself for a job that replaces me the moment I'm tired? Gen Z didn't escape work. They escaped self-destruction disguised as productivity. Now we need to acknowledge something important. Gen Z grew up in a world where teenagers became rich in their bedrooms. They watched people make millions on YouTube, TikTok, and Twitch. They saw creators earning more from one sponsored post than some workers earn in a month. They saw gamers become millionaires. They saw entrepreneurs build brands on their iPhones. They saw entire careers built off storytelling or niche hobbies. And whether you call it unrealistic, inspiring, or delusional, it undeniably changed the psychology of young people. When you
What this is, in my opinion, is the fact that the internet provides us so much information. There's so many different streams of information that you can't stop it. You Nobody is able to control the narrative anymore because there's so many different sources. This is why they want to ban things like TikTok, because you can't control the narrative. I mean, there are other reasons, but that's one of them, in my opinion, because we now have free access to information, and we don't have sanctioned information anymore. They're trying to do this. They're trying to do this by sort of instituting the ideas of disinformation, malinformation. You know, you've heard all that jazz before. But the truth is that they're done. They're cooked. They are cooked because there's no way to control the flow of information now for these people. There's just no way. They're going to try. They're going to try and do like you can only access the internet with your pass ID, digital ID or whatever. And whatever. They're going to track you and they're going to try and limit people. Of course they will, because yes, they are losing like TV channels, news channels are not being watched anymore. The BBC, which is the public broadcaster in the United Kingdom, everybody's realizing that it's crap. Everybody's canceling their subscriptions. Nobody watches it anymore. There are literally YouTubers, British YouTubers, that have double the views of the BBC each day, and it's a totally losing model. And they're gonna pivot, you know. But I'm afraid it's the end of the line for them. And the older we get, the older Gen Z gets, the more power, political power, we're gonna have. So hopefully, you guys, you don't lose faith, and hopefully you remember what what they're doing, okay? Because I talked to somebody older than me about this, and they told me that the older you get, the more kind of your priorities shift. And so it's possible that the older my generation gets, the more they begin to conform to the situation. But I don't know. We'll just have to see. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear that.
Grow up seeing people your age succeed outside traditional work, you naturally start questioning the point of following outdated paths. Why grind through corporate ladders when you can be a freelancer? Why limit yourself to one employer when you can just build your own audience? Of course, not everyone becomes famous. Most don't. I mean, look at me. I got 11 subscribers. Please subscribe. But the possibility of alternative paths make traditional work seem like only one option, not the default option it once was. That shift is huge. One of the funniest but also most powerful forces shaping Gen Z's attitude towards work is meme culture. The internet mocks everything about corporate life. The I don't dream of labor trend, the jokes about quiet quitting, the videos making fun of managers who say, we are like a family, the endless memes about burnout, low pay, pointless meetings, fake enthusiasm, and 9 to 5 misery. Memes don't just entertain, they normalize shared experiences. They make workers realize, oh, it's not just me, everyone feels like this. In a strange way, memes became the new union meetings. They united millions of people across the world with humor, but behind the humor is a shared truth. Most people are tired. Most
That's a shame, because the closest thing we have to unions nowadays is memes, and that kind of tells you all you need to know about whether or not we live in a corporate hellscape.
jobs are exhausting, most workplaces are outdated, and nobody wants to pretend otherwise anymore. By now, the real answer should be clear. Gen Z doesn't hate work. They hate meaningless work, exploitative work, underpaid work, or work that demands loyalty without offering stability. They hate environments that drain their energy without feeding their growth. They hate systems that promise freedom but deliver stress. But when Gen Z actually believes in something, they put in more effort, creativity, and dedication than anyone else. They start businesses, they learn online, they master digital tools faster than any generation before. They build audiences, brands, and skills on their own. They innovate. Gen Z isn't lazy, they're efficient, they're strategic, and most importantly, they're self-aware. At the end of the day, the question we should be asking isn't why doesn't Gen Z want to work? The real question is why are we forcing young people to follow a system designed for a world that doesn't exist anymore?
The real question, in my opinion, is how did we let things get so shit, and how long is this gonna stay this way before it changes? Because I mean, it must be the fact that a lot of people still support this situation. It must be probably the fact that a lot of people are heavily in debt. And when you're in debt, then you are what is the phrase I'm looking for? You're indentured servitude is the phrase I'm looking for. meaning that you are owned by somebody. It's like when you have a mortgage, the bank really owns your house. Well, when you are in debt, then the the debt collector owns your ass. And the more attached you are, the more the less chances there are of improving the situation. So the first thing that I would probably advise is get rid of all your debt. Okay? Debt is really bad.
Gen Z is not the problem. They're the mirror reflecting the problems. They are adapting to economic realities older generations never had to face. They're rewriting the rules based on health, freedom, creativity, and fairness. And whether the world is ready or not, the future of work will be shaped by their values. A future where work is flexible, where mental health matters, where creativity is currency, where stability is earned, not demanded, and where hustle is replaced by purpose. Call it rebellion if you want, but it just might be progress.
Okay, cool video. Why young people don't want to work anymore by Mad Economy. 76 subs already. Nice one. Yeah, we aren't going to work for no benefits. That's exactly right. There is no benefits. There's no benefit to work right now. You literally it costs you more to work than what you get out of it because you lose your life, you lose your sanity for the most part. It doesn't really provide a good return where you're in a beneficial position. You kind of just stay in limbo for most of the time. Okay, I'm talking average demographics. Okay, I know that there's lots of people who have a great job or have a fantastic salary, or they work for their parents, or whatever it may be, and they are completely content and happy. And also, when I make these sort of videos calling out problems, there are some people that come and tell me like, you sitting around in your room, you've got your victim mindset and you suck basically, and I'm out there grinding and I'm gonna get ahead of you and buy your house or whatever it may be. And yeah, see, when you're at the top, like looking down at people, it's really easy to find what's wrong. But it's not gonna stay that way forever, and I hope you don't find yourself down in in a bad state, okay? But if it does happen, then you will understand the situation, and that really things are not equitable, and it's not very good if you choose to conduct yourself in this way. Boomer, Gen Z don't want to work. They're lazy and lack work ethics. Translation: Gen Z refused to be exploited and demanded a livable wage. Okay, that goes against our record breaking profits agenda. See, it's all about the shareholder profits. What have these CEOs done to earn their millions? They can ruin a company and skirt off. Yep, that's often what they do, yeah. Shadowmancer is a big and bad behind the avatar. I don't know what Shadowmancer is. Millennials and Gen Zs are not spoiled. They see the system for what it is, a big giant scam. That is indeed how I see the situation. And I'm going to call it there. Thank you for watching.